Many would argue that for at least a century, we have been moving away from the old moral certainties of traditional Christianity. Yet now, new forms of moral certainty are appearing, with much of our culture seemingly gripped by strong standards of virtue and a closely policed sense of right and wrong. Should we welcome this return to virtue and embrace a new moralism that will purge society of its newly found sins? Or are these new certainties merely new forms of prejudice, intolerant assertions of tribal attachments? Is our culture morally bankrupt and in need of greater virtue? Or could we be in the early stages of a Salem witch trial? So I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. First of all, Matthew Taylor. So Matthew is a former political strategist and regular panelist on The Moral Maze. He is now Chief Executive for the Royal Society of Arts. Rebecca Roache is a philosopher who has written on a wide range of ethical issues, including technology, death, and drinking alone. She is well known for her work on the cultural power of swear words. Hilary Lawson is a postmodern philosopher and a renowned critic of philosophical realism, who is best known for his theory of closure. Now, we will begin with pitches from each of our speakers, starting with you, Matthew. Should we welcome a new moralism to purge society of its sins?
I think I approach this issue more as a sociologist, anthropologist, rather than a philosopher. My answer to this question is yes, but in the sense that I think we need to think of morality as a system or a part of a system. So you have a social system, and morality is one of the things that flows through that system. And when societies work, the moral system tends to work, and when societies don't work, the moral system is collapsing in various ways. And one way to think about this is that the three great systems that run through society are actually, or in all of you, they're your three core motivations. So you're motivated by authority, you're motivated by kind of belonging, values, this kind of stuff you think you ought to do, and you're motivated by some idea of autonomy and individual self-interest. And those three things, authority, values, and belonging, and your own individual story, that's what drives you, but also at the level of society as a whole, whether or not the systems of authority, the systems of belonging, and the systems of individual aspiration are aligned, will tell you an awful lot about whether that society is successful. At the moment, in our society, they're very badly aligned, and that's why things are quite grim. So if we were to get a better aligned society, it would have a moral dimension. And so, firstly, we need to think about the authority, the morality that comes from authority. So that's the morality of doing what you're told, basically. And obviously that's weaker than it used to be. Religion was a major source of that. You know, you don't question the Ten Commandments or the Quran, you just do it. And also because state institutions have also weakened. So institutions as a whole are weakened. So that element of morality, that kind of doing what we're told, has become weaker. And I think that's a problem. I think we need to renew authority, renew the legitimacy of authority. I think societies do need to have a morality that is in some extent based on doing what you're told on the basis of what has been agreed, particularly by people who are democratically elected. Secondly, the morality of belonging. And there's an awful lot of that around. So populist politics is all really around the morality of tribe and belonging. And in some ways that's quite vibrant, but the problem is it's very antagonistic. So the morality of tribe we have now is the morality of my tribe good, your tribe bad. And that's why you see the levels of polarization in America between Democrats and Republicans. So Democrats and Republicans in America believe they have no moral responsibility towards each other at all. They think the other side is morally reprehensible, and we feel the same way about Brexit. So we need to think about how we get morality in groups to work. And then finally, individually, we have to change our individual as counter-morality. We were seduced by the nonsense of homo economicus and neoliberalism, which was we could have whatever we want and it would be great for society as a whole. Climate change, hopefully, is the shock to our system that teaches us that we have to think much more deeply about how we align our individual morality with what is good for society as a whole. So it's a systemic issue, and we need to balance different sources of morality to make it work. So we need moral reawakening, but in that broader systemic sense.
Thank you. And straight over to you, Rebecca. Should we welcome a new moralism to purge society of its sins?
Thank you. I'm not sure I agree that we have a new moralism. I mean, there's sort of at least two separate issues sort of mentioned in this, the description of this this debate. One is the idea of a return to virtue, and another is moral certainty. I don't think the idea of virtue has really gone away. So virtue is the idea, so a virtue is a character trait. It's not a sort of right or wrong out there in the world. It's a character trait. If you have the right virtues, then you're going to be disposed to behave morally. I mean, I think that there have always been ideas of what are sort of virtuous and vicious character traits, or vicious being the opposite of virtuous. We might have rethought them in recent years. So, you know, sort of a few decades ago, it might be thought that chastity, at least for sort of women, is a virtue. I think sort of quite rightly we are sort of questioning things like that. We have other ideas at sort of what being virtuous involved. But I think the idea of sort of virtue as an important concept in thinking about morality is still with it. It's still with us, but it's just maybe the sort of thing that we kind of only notice when it changes, you know, when we start to re-question what makes for a good or a bad person. And there are sort of perhaps people disagreeing about that bring us to light. The idea of moral certainty, I think that this is an issue that is potentially concerning. It's hard to work out what we should be certain about morally. And the fact that people disagree should just be, I suppose, just be a check on us that, you know, we might not be right. You know, if we have a certain set of beliefs, if we believe that certain things are right and other people disagree with us, then that itself is just perhaps a cue to us to sort of question whether we're right. I think there's something that is potentially concerning, is that in recent years there has sort of been a willingness to question certain things that seem like they should be unquestionable. So, you know, the idea that we are all people are equal in moral status. You know, there's sort of you see this in the, you know, Matthew mentioned that the Brexit debate. I mean, you see this in the news with people sort of EU citizens living in the UK saying that they don't feel like they're being treated as sort of as humans of the same worth as UK citizens, and then there's this sort of you sort of see it with sort of people like the chairman of Nestle, who a few years ago sort of said, well, you know, I don't think water should be a human right, or that it's not necessarily a human right, or at least that was what he was reported as saying. And that sort of thing, you know, we sort of have a shock response to that, which is like, wow, are you really questioning that? It seems like, you know, there's certain things that we think we ought to be certain about morally, and it can be really unsettling if people start to question them. So I think there's sort of two sides to this. That there are kind of that the idea of people being certain that they're right about moral issues is itself concerning, because, you know, the way that we learn and progress in our moral thinking is through discussion and debate. But then there are other sort of things where we sort of think, well, surely we should all agree that sort of people are all of equal worth, that sort of thing. And that it can be really quite concerning when we encounter a sort of widespread willingness to question that.
Thank you. And finally, Hilary, should we welcome a new moralism, the Purge Society of Excellence?
So, well, more than 100 years ago, at the turn of the 19th century, a philosopher called G. Moore became well known for arguing that there were moral facts which we could describe or not accurately. And that claim seems to me to have become increasingly implausible. Shortly before Moore argued this, just 10 years really before, Fraser in The Golden Bough listed all of the different systems of thought that people had around the world and listed them one after the other. And there were, of course, as many different moral codes and frameworks as there were categories of people that he listed. And of course, it then seemed rather implausible that any one of these groups of people would have somehow stumbled on the truth about moral facts. And the history, it seems to me, or the intellectual history of the 20th century has just embedded that awareness of the particular perspectival character of our beliefs. So we now recognize we are culturally, historically dependent, as it were, and that even our language as a species, we see the world in a particular sort of way. All of these things mean that the way that we hold the world is an accident of our particular circumstance. And therefore, the idea that we might somehow have stumbled on the true morality, we found the good, when there are countless other frames which have different goods and different circumstances, seems to me utterly implausible. Now, I think it's not just implausible, it's dangerous. So if you look at people who think they're good, they're often capable of engaging in the worst and most heinous acts. We don't have to look back to the Christian legacy of the Crusades and the Inquisition, where people who believed they were acting in the good tortured people who had slightly different views from them. In contemporary life, the people who blew up the Twin Towers and beheaded people in Syria believed they were doing good. So we should be very careful of people who think they're doing good. And it's not just that. Morality is also a vehicle of power. All of the parents in the audience will know when your child has for the umpteenth time demanded to do something and you are fed up of trying to explain why it is that you want something to happen, there is a great temptation to say, you shouldn't do that, it's wrong. Or you should do it because it's right. And you're just trying to bring the conversation to an end. You're just trying to be the one in control. And that's what morality is about. It's trying to ensure that your view is the one that persists. And therefore, again, I think we need to be very skeptical of people who wrap themselves in morality as a means of trying to get what they think to happen. But I'd just like to say one further thing, which is, I think there is a sort of transcendental, esoteric sense to morality, which I would be in support of, which is that I think that at some level, we do aspire to the idea of acting outside of human limitation and try to act in a way which is not dependent on our particular circumstances, in some general way to be other than where we are now. And that, I think, is laudable. But we can't turn it into a specific belief. As soon as we turn it into a specific belief, then it risks all of the things that I've said. So, yes, I think we should be skeptical of conventional morality, and we should be just as skeptical of any return to morality if we think that is taking place.
Thank you. Okay, so this brings us on to our first theme, where we're interrogating the roots of morality.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.